Hello everyone and welcome to your own classroom. Today we'll be learning about the part 3 of the mechanism of contraction of skeletal muscles. And in this first we would look at the biochemical events in a muscle contraction, and for that we need to understand a situation. Suppose a hot object is placed in front of your hand and you have accidentally touched that. Then a signal goes from your hand to your brain via afferent or sensory neuron, and your brain decides whether you need to withdraw your hand or whether you need to keep it as such depending upon the intensity of the heat. And then brain sends signal via efferent or motor neuron at the level of the muscle fiber present in your hand. And for understanding how your motor nerve coordinates with your muscle fiber, we would look into neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. The motor end plate is a connection between the motor nerve and the skeletal muscle cell. So as we have seen, this is the motor nerve which I have shown with the green color, and this is the place where your muscle fiber would be there. Its function is to transmit the electrical signals from the nerve cell to the muscle cell. This is the stimulus that will make the skeletal cell contract. Another name for motor end plate is neuromuscular junction, NMJ. This is a very good diagram which I have got from basicphysiology.com, in which you can see this is a neuron attached with a muscle, and this entire unit is referred as motor unit. Basically, when a single neuron innervates a single muscle fiber, this arrangement is referred as motor unit, and this junction is referred as neuromuscular junction, the junction of neuron and a muscle. So as soon as the signal comes from your brain in the form of action potential towards the presynaptic membrane, a large amount of calcium rushes inside the neuron from the calcium channels, and this calcium leads to the fusion of these vesicles present in the neuron with the presynaptic membrane. These vesicles contain neurotransmitter, and here we will talk about acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is that neurotransmitter present in these vesicles, and due to fusion of the vesicles with the presynaptic membrane, acetylcholine would be released at the neuromuscular junction, at the synaptic cleft, and the postsynaptic membrane would have receptors for acetylcholine which would receive it, and gradually a response would be initiated. In this diagram, I have shown a muscle fiber with many myofibrils in it, and I have shown that when acetylcholine is released at the synaptic cleft or at the NMJ or motor end plate, then this acetylcholine generates some kind of action potential on the membrane of the muscle fiber, which is called as sarcolemma. So in the sarcolemma some kind of potential is generated, and which is transferred to the sarcoplasm and finally to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is the storehouse of calcium. So on stimulation with acetylcholine, this sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is present in the sarcoplasm or the cytoplasm of this muscle, releases calcium ions. And if you are thinking that this sarcolemma is a smooth layer, then you are wrong. It is in the form of finger-like projections called as T-tubules or transverse tubules, whose main function is to transfer the signals inside the sarcoplasm. And in this diagram, I have shown that how calcium ions are released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it is almost filled inside the sarcoplasm. Now, what are the events? Let's look at the events one by one. A nerve action potential propagates down the axon of the motor neuron towards the presynaptic membrane, as I explained in this diagram, if you remember. a nerve action potential is traveling. This will lead to the opening of calcium channels, resulting in its influx into the cells. This allows vesicle filled with acetylcholine to fuse with the presynaptic membrane and release its content. Acetylcholine would be released at the presynaptic membrane into the synaptic cleft. And once acetylcholine molecules will be there in the synaptic cleft, it will couple with the specific receptors or acetylcholine receptors located in the postsynaptic membrane. And postsynaptic membrane is a part of muscle fiber that we have seen. The coupling of acetylcholine to the acetylcholine receptor will open the sodium channels on the sarcolemma, and sodium ions diffuse into the postsynaptic cells. If you remember the events called as depolarization or repolarization, then you might be knowing that depolarization is caused by the entry of sodium into the cells. So this is what is happening here. Once sodium channels get opened in the postsynaptic neuron, a depolarization would occur around that postsynaptic membrane and a potential would be generated, and this potential is called as generator potential. And when a large number of acetylcholine molecules will bind to a large number of acetylcholine receptors, resulting in greater amount of generator potential, and when generator potential reaches a threshold value, then an action potential is generated. This action potential, once initiated, will propagate along the muscle membrane, and it will finally reach the sarcoplasm through the T-tubules. Means, what does T-tubules do? T-tubules transfer the potential into the sarcoplasm of the cell, leading to the efflux of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, as I explained. And this calcium binds with the troponin C, and the rest is history, because in the last lecture I have explained that how this calcium binds with the C site of the troponin, and this entire complex drags down and leading to the exposure of this myosin binding site present in the actin. And the next event, there is a ATP binding site in the myosin head, which finally, due to its ATPase activity, leads to the breakdown of ATP into ADP plus PI, and this ADP plus PI causes the myosin head to make a pivot-like structure, and sliding occurs. So this is all about the biochemical event, but from the very beginning we have been talking about the contraction. But at some point of time, these muscles need to relax as well. So what are the steps that are needed to bring about the relaxation of muscle fibers? We'll see here. First, we need to stop that acetylcholine which is coming from the presynaptic membrane in response to the action potential by the brain. So this acetylcholine is broken down at the neuromuscular junction by acetylcholine esterase, this enzyme ACE. This is written as ACE. This enzyme breaks acetylcholine into acetate plus choline, which is then recycled. And now what we have to do? Second, we know that there are a large amount of calcium ions present inside the sarcoplasm. So we need to pump that calcium ion back into the sarcoplasm. Why pump? Because sarcoplasmic reticulum has already got plenty of calcium in it. So we have to push the calcium against the concentration gradient. So it is an active process. Then the third and major step is to replace the ADP by ATP. You have already studied about this in the last lecture. So once there are three steps when acetylcholine is broken down by acetylcholine esterase into acetate plus choline. Second, calcium ions present in the sarcoplasm is pumped back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, where it binds with specific calcium binding protein called as calsequestrins. These are present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And third is the replacement of ADP by ATP in the myosin head. So these three things are must for the relaxation. Let's go to the next slide. Now we will study about the Cori cycle. It was given by Cori and House, and they have got a Nobel Prize in 1947 for that. So let's see what happens in Cori cycle. As you can see, it is labeled muscle here. So inside the muscles, glycogen is stored. So under strenuous exercise conditions, this glycogen is broken down into glucose, and due to excessive strain, this anaerobic condition is created and glucose undergo glycolysis to form lactic acid or lactate. And as you know, lactate causes pain and fatigue, cramps. So it migrates from the muscle cells or myocytes to the liver, to the blood first, and then finally to the liver. And in the due course, 20% of this lactic acid, 20% of this lactic acid is converted into carbon dioxide and water. 20% of this lactic acid is converted into carbon dioxide and water, and rest 80% is converted back to the glucose and gets stored as the glycogen. And this glycogen is again broken down into glucose by glycogenolysis whenever glucose is required during strenuous exercise by the muscles. So this cycle continues. As you can see, inside the muscle, when glucose is converted into lactate, 2 ATPs are lost, while inside the liver, 2 ATPs are released in this process, and while in the liver, 6 ATPs are consumed to produce glucose from 2 molecules of lactate. So let's go to the next slide, and here we will look at some of the terms. As I said, motor unit is consists of a single motor neuron and the muscle fiber innervating it, or I would say a single muscle fiber innervating it. Then we will study about all or none principle, or this is also called as Bowditch effect because it was first time discovered by Bowditch. So on receiving a threshold stimulus, if a muscle fiber contracts, it contracts maximally or it does not contract at all. कहने का मतलब यह है कि अगर एक थ्रेशोल्ड स्टिमुलस मिलने के बाद एक मसल फाइबर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेगा, तो या तो वो पूरा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेगा या तो वो बिल्कुल भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं करेगा. देयर वुड बी नथिंग लाइक 30% कॉन्ट्रैक्शन और 50% कॉन्ट्रैक्शन. So this is called as all or none principle. Just opposite of all or none principle is graded potential principle. So what is graded potential principle? In which you will see with the increase in the strength of the stimulus, the effect is increased. For example, when you will see like vision, in case of vision, when the light, as the light increases, your vision, the capability to see is increases with that. Now we will study about single muscle twitch. Single muscle twitch, you just need to remember some terms. Single isolated muscle contraction due to a single threshold stimulus. Means when you give a single threshold stimulus leading to a single isolated muscle contraction, you're giving a single stimulus which is leading to a single muscle contraction. This is called a single muscle twitch. Then there is summation effect, means addition of one contraction to the previous one produces a greater shortening as seen in case of spasm. Shortening here means contraction. Contraction would be greater. अगर पहले के कॉन्ट्रैक्शन के बाद रिलैक्सेशन नहीं हुआ तो पहले के कॉन्ट्रैक्शन के साथ ही दूसरा कॉन्ट्रैक्शन भी हो जाएगा. सो दिस विल प्रोड्यूस ग्रेटर शॉर्टनिंग ऑफ द मसल फाइबर्स. सो दिस इज व्हाट इज सीन. दिस इज द रेट ऑफ दिस इज द डिग्री ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्शन which is increasing and finally leading to a tetanus like condition. Tetanus क्या होता है? लॉक जॉ डिजीज बोलते हैं, जिसमें spasms होते हैं. Spasms are contractions basically. They are uncontrolled contractions. Then there is a case called as Treppe or staircase effect. In this effect, the strength of muscle contraction increases with repeated stimulus of equal strength. Although relaxation time is there is proper relaxation after every contraction, but since equal strength of stimulus is being given again and again, that's why first few contractions causes the muscles to warm up, and then there is a constant high tension in the muscles. If you think of the condition of athletes, they are first asked to warm up. Why? Because their muscles would attain a state of contraction which would remain at a high tension for a very longer time. So this is trepe or staircase effect. Now we'll look at the types of contraction. So basically there are two types of contraction: isotonic contraction and isometric contraction. Isotonic, iso means same, tonic means tension. So when tension remains same and the length of muscle fiber changes. As you can see here, you are lifting an object or putting an object down. In both the cases here, you are lifting a dumbbell and putting the dumbbell down. In these cases, the tension remains same. All the length of the muscle fiber changes. While in isometric contraction, the length of muscle fiber remains same, but tension increases. Suppose you are holding an object for a very long time. So the length remains same, but the tension is increasing. The first type, in which you are actually lifting an object, the first type of isotonic contraction, this is referred as concentric contraction. And the second type, in which you are putting the object down, this is referred as eccentric contraction, eccentric contraction. Next, we'll look at some definitions. Tension is the force produced by the whole muscle when it contracts. Then tonus, muscle tonus is a state of sustained partial contraction. What does this mean? Means even if you are in a relaxed state, even if you are standing at a place and you are in relaxed state, then also your muscles are in slightly or partially contracted state. Then there is muscle hypertrophy. Increase in the size of muscles. Hypertrophy means increase in the, oh sorry, I have misspelled it. The increase in the size of muscle cell due to increase in the number of filaments, number of mitochondria, and amount of sarcoplasm. This is what is seen in the bodybuilders. Their muscles get hypertrophied. Then there is a concept of refractory period, interval during which a muscle failed to respond to a second stimulus. And cardiac muscles have the longest refractory period. Means what I'm saying, if we look at this diagram, so as you can see, we have given a stimulus. Suppose, let me turn on a pointer first. Suppose we have given a stimulus here, and due to this stimulus, a contraction occurs and gradually a relaxation occurs. And this is the time frame when, no matter how much is the strength of stimulus you give, there won't be a second contraction wave. So this is referred as refractory period. But yes, I know that this is like contradicting with the summation effect. Anyhow, you have to study this. Then there is oxygen depth. What is oxygen depth? During strenuous exercise, the muscle does not get sufficient oxygen. So what it does, when the muscle doesn't get sufficient oxygen to meet its energy needs, immediately it contracts anaerobically and accumulates lactic acid that is produced by glycolysis. So during recovery, the oxygen consumption of muscle exceeds, and this extra consumption is called as oxygen depth. Udhar lena. It is used in oxidizing accumulated lactic acid aerobically and in restoring the depleted phosphocreatine and ATP in the muscle fiber. So this is all in the mechanism of muscle contraction. Thank you.